we can all have different varying degrees of what we experience in childhood. But those that have particularly difficult suffered abuse, their shadow does seem to be more predominant going into adult life. And it's trying to get that balance of how do you heal that to move forward. That's a very difficult aspect in itself.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And step number one is awareness. Because most people, I was with the ex-fiance that left, and I mean, her shadow was in charge the whole time, and she had no awareness of it, it continues to destroy her life. So, that was a great example for me, and that's why I was put into that relationship was to see, like, here is the shadow at work. Here's someone who's not aware of this side of them, and lets that shadow control their life, and it's from a place of fear. So every decision is made in a fight or flight instance, when every decision does not need to be made that way.
Yes.
One of the rungs is intuition versus instinct. There's a massive difference between these. A lot of people use these things interchangeably, but intuition and instinct are very different things. And if you're running on instinct, which is that fear-based, we need instinct. It's good. If someone's holding a gun coming down the street, like out of a car.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we are joined by our guest, Justin L. Shaw. Justin is the author of the book Sourcery, 13 Rungs to the Higher Elevation of Consciousness. Justin's journey from personal struggles to spiritual awakening has led him to develop a powerful approach to transformation, blending humor, wisdom, and deep insight to source energy. His book challenges us to break free from limiting beliefs, embracing higher consciousness, and tap into the true power within us. Welcome, Justin, to the show. Can we start by asking a little bit about your backstory and your inspiration for the book, please?
A whole lot of stuff. So I went through a period, first of all, there's a lot of, childhood stuff that, I've struggled my entire life with, dealing with kind of like just general, not abuse, but just general neglect. My parents were not the type that were good with any sort of vulnerability. So talking about anything personal or, I wasn't hugged a lot. There was no use of the word love around my house. Now, it's not that they didn't love me. It's that they had no idea how to express this in any sort of healthy way. So talking about, direction of my life, or, things that are tough to talk about, just simply didn't get discussed. So this led to a life of struggle. So I got into drug addiction heavily, and, I've spent nights in rehabs and jails and, on park benches at times, and it was rough. So, I finally got things turned around in late 20s, and, found kind of AA and rehab, and that whole, that's the path you're supposed to take. So, I took it, and it delivered what it said. It got me sober. I was sober, but I was still struggling, emotionally and with things, and it kind of gets you sober, and like, okay, I'm sober, now what? So there's no direction in my life still. There was no sort of, I kind of got the spiritual aspect, but, AA is kind of disguised Christianity, and it's just really, it's been a tough thing for me, because I really delved into Christianity and found out that, it's really not for me. AA and Christianity is about letting God in. The sorcery concept is about letting God out. So there's a big difference there. And then, so I still struggled, because I hit this period of my life, which I'm coming out of, I'm now healing from, but this period of my life where, just all these horrible events happened in a short amount of time. My mother died, my sister died, there was job loss, there was a childhood friend that died, and then it all got capped off by losing my son. Not death, but my fiance at the time, who was also very heavily traumatized and is in need of a lot of prayer, I'll say that, just kind of skipped out, moved across the country, started a new life, and just shut me out of their life. Just completely shut me out. He's an infant son, so he had no say in the matter. Yeah. But that was kind of that was the cap. That was like, that brought me to my knees, and it's just like, what in the world is going on. And I was at a point of just total loss, total emotional breakdown, suicidal for sure, like wondering what to do. So the inspiration for the book happened at the very end of this. I was in kind of this trauma response thing where I got to get out of here. So I live in Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale technically, and that's where I've born and raised my whole life. So as kind of this trauma response, I moved up to Sedona, which, if those unfamiliar with Sedona, it's kind of the spiritual mecca almost for America now. It didn't used to be that way, but it's really come that way. It's a very high tourist place. So I just decided to move there and see where that took me. I got a job working with traumatized kind of young adults, 18 to 29, which was awesome. But the first day I got there, I got up on Bell Rock, which is kind of one of their famous vortices, and I just did this meditation. And I'd been finding meditation and had a crazy spiritual experience that I can talk about later, which was a couple years before this. And so I was meditating and just put it out there, like, I need direction. I need, what do I do with my life? And about a month later on a walk, this concept came to me, this whole Sourcery thing, which is spelled with a U, because it's not about wizarding Harry Potter stuff. I know we'd all like to be able to turn our roommate into a frog, but it's not that kind of sorcery. So it's spelled with a U because it's source energy. It is what surrounds us. Fish are not aware of the water. Water is not a concept to fish. What water? So there's an energy that surrounds us at all times, and that is source energy. They call it dark matter. There's the unified field. There's a million things you can call it.
Justin, before you go too much further, so I know you've done many interviews, I'm sure, but there's a couple of things that I've noticed. You've basically been to the bottom of the bottom. You can't get any lower than what you've experienced.
Yep.
Now, that in itself is a journey. What kept you from doing something stupid? There's a lot of people that are in a lot of dark places out there that contemplate that stupidity. And I say stupidity because you've got to the point where you had that enlightenment and you've gone on from that. But a lot of people don't come from that. What kept you going? Sorry, I'm thank you for being so...
Yeah, no, interrupt at any time. I'll just ramble if not. So, yeah, there's just this... I just was able to find... knowing that there was some kind of meaning, just knowing that there is something greater than me that is guiding me, I suppose. I did, in the midst of all this, there's like a several-year period where all these horrible things were happening. In the midst of it, before I met my fiance and the whole sun thing happened, I discovered meditation. I started doing things I mentioned in the book, which is like shadow work and really like challenging false beliefs and deconstructing things that I used to believe about myself and about the world. And while I'm doing this, I'm kind of meditating and learning more about quantum physics and the whole, things that are on the Planck scale, very small, and just fascinated with all this. So learning was really... because if I was learning and interested in something, and during that time period, I was able to feel better. So you have to kind of feel it to heal it, and what you resist will persist. So you have to get through it, but at the same time, there's things you can do that help. And certainly talking with people helped me through it. Learning, the whole meditating thing, that's just a part of my life now.
Yeah.
So that's just...
And in the book as well, you talk about the first rung of your system is shadow work, and how important is that work in that process?
It was just critical. I mean, as I was meditating and deconstructing these false beliefs I have about the world, and there's 13 rungs which came to me, and there's very important as 13 because number 13 is this false belief we have as humanity that it's a unlucky number, when in fact it's the number of divinity and is very lucky. So there's a specific reason there's 13 of them. And so that's one of the things that's like challenging these false beliefs and things that, especially in the Christian sect that was, like there's just all these things that were separate from God, and there's just there's all these things that I was deconstructing at the time, and also meditating. And then I had this moment where like I truly connected to the field, and I understand what like the field was. It's hard to grasp until it's like explaining, like if you stick a fork into an electric socket, it's like explaining that electric shock to someone who lives in the Amazon. Like you have a hard time explaining like what that feels like.
Yeah.
But once you connect it, it's there. And it's like I had been in airplane mode my whole life, the whole life. And it was like I turned off airplane mode and just things started coming, truths, realities. And I realized like everything I believed was wrong. And like there's a whole illusionary aspect to the world, and like just all this stuff came to me, and I knew in that moment that things were going to change.
That is amazing, because so many people want that to happen to them. But I mean, we talk about the shadow work. Now, there'll be some people watching the podcast today that have just started. They may be starting to receive things, but they won't necessarily understand what shadow work is. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, basically the whole concept of the shadow is from George Young. I'm such a pop culture. That was Johnny Depp's character in the movie Blow, not George Young, Carl Young.
Oh, yeah.
Was coined that term, and it's essentially the reactionary side of us. It's when a soul is broken, it creates a shadow, and it becomes this side of us that is undesirable.
Yeah.
But we can't be aware of it until we're actually aware of it. It just is this reactionary side. I create a lot of distance from my shadow because I am not the shadow itself. I am the awareness of the shadow. So my shadow's name is Floyd. I named it Floyd because in True Romance, there's a great movie called True Romance that Brad Pitt's character in it is just a small cameo role. And he plays this just loser roommate to one of the central characters in the film. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't get out. He doesn't do right. He doesn't pay rent. He doesn't do chores. He doesn't do anything. But the main character loves him so much. He's like a brother that he doesn't kick him out. He just lets him just be.
Yeah.
So my shadow is Floyd, the roommate that doesn't contribute much to my life, but I love too much to kick out.
So I love that analogy, but in terms of, because people always say, oh, you've got to heal that aspect of yourself. Is it more about being aware of self rather than actually trying to, that's something that never goes away, potentially.
Right. Yeah, no, there's always going to be, I mean, to any gaping wound, there's always, you get shot, you can heal that, but remains a scar. And that scar is there, but a scar is a whole lot better than just leaving it a gaping wound.
Yeah.
So there is an aspect to healing, but does it heal completely? No, it's still there, but it becomes less and less invasive in your life. And I know when Floyd wants to make a decision, that is because I have the awareness that like, oh no, that's what Floyd wants to do. That's not what Justin wants to do. And so there's a separation in between the reactionary and the divine. And the key is to be aware of both of them, because we all have them to varying degrees. I mean, if you had a great child and you haven't gone through a lot of trauma, maybe your shadow is extremely minimal. For other people, it rules their life. And everyone knows someone whose life is a mess. And it's because the shadow is in charge.
So that's a very interesting analogy, especially I find people that have difficult childhoods. Obviously, we can all have different varying degrees of what we experience in childhood. But those that have particularly difficult suffered abuse, their shadow does seem to be more predominant going into adult life. And it's trying to get that balance of how do you heal that to move forward. That's a very difficult aspect in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And step number one is awareness. Because most people, I was with the ex-fiance that left, and I mean, her shadow was in charge the whole time, and she had no awareness of it, it continues to destroy her life. So that was a great example for me, and that's why I was put into that relationship was to see, like, here is the shadow at work. Here's someone who's not aware of this side of them and lets that shadow control their life. And it's from a place of fear. So every decision is made in a fight or flight instance when every decision does not need to be made that way.
Yes.
One of the rungs is intuition versus instinct. There's a massive difference between these. A lot of people use these things interchangeably, but intuition and instinct are very different things. And if you're running on instinct, which is that fear-based, we need instinct. It's good. If someone's holding a gun coming down the street, like out of a car, your instinct says duck and get into a bush. You need that.
Yeah.
But if that event happens and then you don't process it correctly, then every car coming down the street, you're going to want to jump in the bush, and that's not necessary. So that's where intuition comes in. So instinct lives in the gut, intuition lives in the heart. Yeah. So more decisions need to be made heart-based than gut-based. We still need it, but most people we don't need reactionary decisions as much as we make them.
And is that I kind of want to say, is that the holy grail in itself, trying to not be so reactive? Because, look, let me be funny, someone cuts me up in the car, I'm like, oh, for heaven's sake, you just almost took me out, That anger or that frustration can come up straight away. Now, that's more superficial rather than having this constant, say if I had road rage constantly, that's a bit more, well, maybe there's a problem here. Maybe there's something I need to go deeper with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, it is. It's there, and it's something to be aware of. I mean, because the thing is we're always going to react to certain situations. It's just how long are we going to stay in that reaction? Because you can just stay in that reaction and just keep reacting all day. That guy that cut you off and flipped you off, for people that just stay in that reaction all day, that's their day is done. They're unpleasant to deal with. They're going to be mad all day. Whereas, like you feel yourself react, you can let it go and then be a more pleasant human being to deal with.
And I know guys that support football clubs over in the UK, a lot of soccer clubs here. And if a team loses, they can be grumpy all day. And their whole day is ruined just based on the fact that their guys didn't score a goal. And they didn't.
Used to be that guy.
And it just ruins the whole weekend. And then obviously the family around you, it's not great.
Yeah. Great. No, I absolutely. It's football here, but it's a different football. But I was big into sports, played a lot of sports, and I used to be that guy. So absolutely. And I live in a town where we lose all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. The Suns, Cardinals, we do not win ever. So living that kind of life was not fun. So I'm glad to be far less. I'm still a fan, but I'm a very detached fan. I don't really care what happens anymore.
That's exactly how I am with my team. Exactly the same. There's a detachment level to it. But that in itself is quite unique, because that only comes with time, that perspective comes into it. Mm-hmm. And being conscious of the emotion of why you're being drawn into that.
Well, the world happens through us, not to us. So perspective is a huge, huge deal. How we're viewing things, how, I try to view things in a different light, because it is a projection, like a reality, it is a projection. And so just like a regular projector, you put a movie in the projector and it could be a Razzie Worst Picture winner or an Oscar Best Picture winner. The projector is not going to tell you this movie's crap. Play another movie. The projector is going to play whatever you play it. So in order to project the reality you want, you have to be aware of what you're projecting.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because your second step, you call for potentially an inaction rather than sometimes an inaction rather than doing action. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So a call for inaction. I try to make clever names for all the rungs. So, and let me explain the rungs. So the rungs kind of were birthed from my time in AA. So I saw something in AA that was, it worked for people. The 12 steps, that was something that, has worked for a long time, and it does do as it promises, it gets you sober. But I wanted to create something different. I wanted to focus on healing and thriving. So that whole idea, and the whole sobriety thing comes naturally when you focus on healing and thriving.
Yes.
There is no focus on sobriety. It just kind of comes naturally. I don't want to drink or use because I'm focused on these other healthy things. But so rungs, it's like you're, like a ladder, you're getting a higher, a better perspective, because like, a bird has a better view on things than the worm. So instead of steps, moving forward is good, but moving up is better. So they're rungs, and but the second one is a call for an action. And that's just the importance to take time out and be still. So one of the keys to thriving is to pause, listen, and trust. Like pause, listen, and trust. And that will get you through almost anything.
Because I read somewhere that 13, it was Christianity that said that 13 was unlucky. It was a Christian belief, rather than a lot of civilizations believed that 13 was very spiritual.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. And that's one of the false beliefs. Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole reason it's 13. Get you questioning these false beliefs.
So when you sent me the online book, I was like, straight away, boom, got it. This is good. I was really excited to read this. So you also talk about Western medicine and treating symptoms rather than root causes. Now, I know that's one of the focuses of the book. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Western medicine, it's the focus again, and it's just on the symptom of your spiritual malady. Yeah. So whether it's, AA has even gotten so ridiculous with it. There's a different A for every drug. And this all happened in the beginning because AA, all these old geezers didn't want to hear them talking about hippie. All the hippies talk about drugs in their meetings. So immediately they cause separation. We don't want to hear that. Let's make a new meaning for them. And now there's heroin anonymous, there's cocaine anonymous, there's all these anonymous, without recognizing that everyone's suffering from the same thing. And Western medicine is very similar in that, what's wrong with you is what we'll deal with that. We'll treat the symptom and not the root cause. Because honestly, if you treat the root cause, now there's no reason for you to keep coming back. If you treat the symptoms, well, let's lessen the symptoms and keep them on the pills, and then they keep coming back. If you heal someone, actually heal them, well, then you've lost your repeat business. So I don't say this to like all doctors, because one of the things, the views of Sourcery is that the world is not black and white. It's gray. So I am not saying doctors are bad and evil at all. If I got in a car accident, my guts are hanging out, don't send me to a chiropractor. Okay. So it's, it's doctors are good, for anything acute, but what they don't understand is anything considered chronic. Yeah. And there can be chronic physical, chronic mental. These are spiritual conditions that really need to be thought of in a spiritual way, but that's never going to happen. So it's just, and I've been on, and I know I've gone through the whole doctor thing. I was actually in the 2000s, we went through, especially here in America, the whole opioid crisis. And I had doctors that were essentially drug dealers. I had street drug dealers too, but my first string drug dealer had, a fish tank and magazines to look at when I weighed it. So it's just, and it's better now, but there's still this focus on, getting people on pills, and it's just, if it works for you, that's great. You can still look into, and, you can be on pills and still focus on your spirit. But for me, I feel so much better just off everything and just focusing on my spirit. And, there's a river of discomfort you have to cross to get here. But on that other, on the other side of that river of discomfort is freedom, is this high that like I can't even explain, but you have to get uncomfortable for a little bit.
What a great metaphor, to cross that river to get into that place where you need to be. I love that. It's a great metaphor. Coming back to the medicine then, basically, do you believe in what we are, in our core, we manifest in our physical experience?
Oh yeah, no question. It's just, it's the recycled energy. If you're not aware, if you're not living your life with intention, we're a country and a society with intention deficit disorder. So, without focusing your intention on something, the old energy of what had happened just recycles itself. And without intentionally, guiding your life and saying what kind of person you want to be and where you want it to go, the past just continues to, because you're living in the energy of the past, therefore it's going to continue to recycle itself and it's going to manifest in your world. So it takes time. Change take, you can't just like close your eyes and open up and it's changed. But, time isn't real as the way we think it is. It's, like you keep doing this and eventually you will, open your eyes and things are different. But it does take time. It does take time.
Absolutely. I know you touched on karma, but is that where karma comes in as well? There's a karmic connection to the medical things that we experience. Would you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's this incredible series on Netflix called Beef. I love to point people to it because it is exact negative karma, and karma happens with good stuff too. Karma goes both ways. That's
absolutely.
People say karma's a bitch. Well, if you treat her with love and respect, she swings both ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just because if you're that whole series, it's like the guy in it. There's like a car accident and he holds on to that energy of like, this person cut me off and like he goes back and he gets even with her and then she holds that energy and he gets back and even with her and this whole thing just spins out and it's just, that's how it works. That show should have been called Karma. Yeah. So if you're interested in how karma works, that show breaks it down perfectly. Holding on to old energies is going to have you just repeat all these things, and it's just going to cycle off. And everyone knows the person that's their life is out of control, and it's their karmic energy that they're holding on to that keeps bringing these. They're asking for it. They don't think they're asking for it, but they are on a subconscious level.
You talk about source energy and receiving. How did you get to that point where you had this? I want to say a download because it's more of a term that people can understand, and you've done that within the book as well. You've used South Park, you've used Star Wars to describe the Force. I love that because it brings people in to what you're saying. They can compare that. It's brilliant.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of pop culture in it because I grew up, in this kind of emotional vacuum of my house, and I've met so many people like me that just grew up in front of a TV, like that. It just that was their happy spot, was like the TV, the video games, like because there was just no emotion in my house. Like that's what I gravitated towards. So it was movies, it was video games, it was TV, and like these things, and that's all I did, and that's all it's been. So it's just that's all it's been going through my head for a long time, and so now that I'm kind of in this different kind of awakened position, I see so many things in the things of childhood that are like. I think that the answers to many of life's riddles are hidden in the nooks and crannies of pop culture. You just have to like be aware of it and find it. And the Force is just another name for that field, that unified field, and it's there. And once you connect to it, I use the airplane mode because it's like it is the download. It is getting signals and realities and truths, and they're truths because you just know.
Yeah.
And it is that airplane mode. And once you're off, and now I kind of understand brainwaves better. It's kind of you're kind of in that gamma brainwave state, and it only has to happen once, and it is then turned off forever, and you can connect back to it at any time, but. Once it happens, and if you're questioning, I wonder if that's happened, it hasn't happened. But people that are off airplane mode know they're off airplane mode.
Yeah. And your intuitive self, which we talked about at the beginning, has a connection to that because it's that bridge between the source, the power, the connection, the force, as I see it. And I know everyone has a different opinion. Once you say you're off that airplane mode, I think we come from very similar backgrounds and aspects of what we've experienced. And for me, I've always chuckled at the idea of the Force because I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan. I used to watch it. I remember the original one that came out in 1977. That was the first film I saw. And it was a really old-fashioned movie. And it just blew me away with this whole idea of the Force. But there is this power, there is this force that's so real that we miss it all the time. And for a lot of guys at home, be like, gee, I wish I could experience that. But do you believe that is a process? Your book, leading to the 13 steps, does that help people to evolve to that space? I know,
Absolutely.
okay, I'm going to be honest, Justin. You're going to say yes, okay, because you're the author. But all this makes sense to me. It makes logical sense. And I do really believe your book can help people to find that source, that connection. So I kind of, I didn't want to put you on a spot and say yes, because people are going to go, yeah, she's going to say yes. But from what I've read and what I've seen, I think this will really help people to connect. So again, coming back to that inspiration, where do you want to see this going? And yeah, I'll stop there because there's a lot more questions coming. But where do you see this going for people?
Yeah, I mean, look, all we need, it's called the Maharishi effect. It's 1% of any given society to change the whole makeup of the entire rest of the population.
Yeah.
And the best way 1%, that doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to realize diet soda is 99% water.
Yeah.
That structure, 1% has completely changed the structure of that liquid. Chimpanzees are 1% away from being human. I mean, 1% changes everything.
Yeah.
So, the goal is not to get all of humanity on board. It's just, if you can get just a small group of people that, can like work through these rungs. And if you do work through them, and I hope to have more things. Like, I'm just getting started with this. You're at the this book came out 6 weeks ago. I hope to, I don't even have social media. Like, I've been on social media for like 4 years, and now I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's time to get back on. But, I'd like to create content and like kind of help people through stuff. And I have none of that available right now, but that's goals, get intention.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really would like to see a shift in society, because part of that is just maintaining. And I tell people specifically how to train your intuition, how to get in touch with it, how to start asking questions, and it will tell you back. You're a medium, so I'm definitely not in that. I am not in that. I'm just a normal person. I am not at all a medium. I don't see ghosts. I've never seen a ghost. I am a normal human being. But we all have the ability to be a medium. Now, I still don't see ghosts or anything, but I have an in touch with the outside me. There's a whole chapter on the simulation theory, and I make the best argument I've ever heard for this being a simulation. So yeah, we can get into that too. But that is the higher self, which is the connection. Once you make that connection, you are no longer an NPC, a non-player character. You are now a player character, and you are in charge of your life. So it's just that connection, boom, hits. And so I have this great example. So just a couple months ago, I'd finished the book, and this is that whole instinct versus intuition thing. And I was eating steak, as I'm one to do. I'm a fan. And I was eating a piece, and I'd swallowed, and it kind of got lodged. It was nothing crazy, but it was just one of those instances where it's like, you got to swallow again and get it down.
Yeah.
But and that's kind of the instinct that's the instinct. Swallow again, get it through.
Yeah.
But because I've been training my intuition, and I ask questions and I do things and I follow it louder than ever, I got a voice, an inner voice, not an audible ever. It's just this inner voice that yelled at me, stop. And so I stopped, and I'm like looking around, and it said, one more, and I live I'm alone with a dog. That's it. She can't help me. So, and it said, one more swallow and you die.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting here like, okay, all right, what do I do? And it walked me through what to do. I could still, because it was lodged in there, but I could still get air around it. So it said, all right, breathe air, and I breathed in, and I gave myself the Heimlich, and it shot out.
Wow.
And it's just, things like that are just completely unexplainable. But it is because I've developed this connection with me outside of here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I 100%, because I always say to people, when we become more spiritually aware and awakened, our higher self will warn us of things that potentially could happen. Like, I used to suffer with bad nosebleeds. It would tell me, you're about to suffer a nosebleed. Just make sure you got tissue. Because it wasn't nice. You're in a situation, you could be at work, and suddenly you got this blood everywhere. But higher self would tell you. So this is fantastic that that I'm hearing this from you, Justin, because so many people don't understand that connection between our higher selves and us. And you're absolutely right about mediumship. Mediumship, I don't like the word because it makes it sound that we're something different. We're not. All of us have the potential to connect with our higher self and more. And that's all it is. That's all mediumship is. It doesn't make us any better. We're not gifted. We are all gifted. But as you've discovered with these 13 steps, we all have this potential to be empowered, to have the potential to live. And I'm guessing this is probably one of the inspirations for your book, living our lives to our fullest potential.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's intuition training specifically. I go over like how to train it, like how to ask questions, like you have to get a good sense for what's a yes and a no.
Yeah.
So you'll ask a question that the answer is yes, kind of close your eyes, you have to take some deep breaths and clear your mind first. So, and the best way to do that is just 5 really deep breaths in and out. You can place your hand on your heart because you want the information coming from here. Close your eyes and ask yourself a question you know the answer is yes to. And so for everyone, it's different. For me, there's kind of an inner voice that says yes, but it could be a color or symbol, or everyone's different. So you have to get to know what's yes and what's no. And then you ask yourself the question you know the answer no to. And then you can kind of move from there and ask it from, should I go to this event? Should I call this person? Kind of easy things that you're sensing the yes and no answers to. And then, when big things come up, it'll automatically tell you, and you're just going to know what to do.
Absolutely. Because so many people get caught up in, I just can't see it or do it for myself. I get stuck, or I need to go and see a psychic, which I don't think that's great, because I think we should all be empowered that we can connect to that. So again, it's another reason to buy your book, Justin. It will help people. It will help people to be empowered and connect to your higher self. It's amazing.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit more about the source energy? I've just made it sound like ketchup now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
That connection, your understanding, what do you think that source energy is? I know we talked a little bit about being all interconnected. Is there something more with that? Dare we use the word God? And I don't want to go down a theological debate, but dare we use the word God to understand the perspective of what it is we're connecting to?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's a million different names for it. I mean, dark matter, unified field, God, Allah. There's all these things that it's called. I like to use source because a lot of people were religiously traumatized, and the G word is kind of like, ugh. So
absolutely.
That's why I really like source, because it is where we all came from and we're all going back to. And it is just the energy that everything is made out of. I mean, everything is down to atoms, science can't explain why this table, why can't, I'm made of atoms. It's made of atoms. Like, why can't my hand just go through it?
Yeah.
And it's just all this energy that's around us that we just can't see. It is matter. It is dark matter. I don't like that term as much because it feels nefarious, dark matter, because really it's light matter. I feel like I'm the dark matter and it's the light matter, but that's how it's kind of said. But it is, it's everywhere and makes up everything. And it's incredible. Once you have to first be aware of it, and then you can connect to it, and then it can start leading and changing a life like it did for me. It's been incredible.
Yeah. And that's important. I wanted to touch on a little bit also. I'm sorry, we're jumping around here because there's so much in your book. We're not going to get it all in 1 hour. So guys, could you just remind people at home what the book is called?
Yeah, it's called Sourcery 101, spelled with a U, because I'm not Gandalf. And then it's 13 rungs to a higher elevation of consciousness. But it's spelled with a U. If you're looking it up on Amazon, just use my name, which is Justin L. Shaw, or you can use the word sorcery. But if you type in Sourcery 101, I'm gotta get him to do this. If you type in Sourcery 101, it autocorrects to the other sorcery and then sends you to a series of books, which apparently is about becoming a wizard, which is also kind of interesting, but it's not my book. But But yeah, if you just type in the word or sorcery with a U, it's like the second one down, or my name, Justin L. Shaw. But for some reason,
That's
so I
crazy.
got to get him to correct that. But yeah, that is the name. Oh, I've got it
What
right
I'll
here.
do, what I'll
like
do,
that.
thank you. What I'll do is I'll make sure the links are in the comments below, guys. Okay, so look out for that, and you'll be able to jump on that. I'll make sure there's a good link to it. What I wanted to go into a little bit now, when a lot of people suffer this, is trauma and unresolved trauma that blocks people. How, straight off the cuff here, how do we move through blocks or trauma?
Yeah, it's so unresolved trauma is a huge deal because it just sits right there in your frontal cortex and it affects your executive functioning. So people with unresolved trauma just can't think things through. It's like having an army without a general.
Yeah.
Unresolved trauma, like you need direction, and without resolving it, it's just people with this. It just sits right here, and it affects every aspect of our lives. So resolving trauma is both the most important and misunderstood thing as humans. We just don't have a good grasp on it. So the importance, and I feel so different. I mean, that's how I know this thing works, because I did it.
Yeah.
And going from where I was like unable to make good decisions, to now finally being free and being able to think, and it's like, oh, this is what it's like. Like, you just have no idea until you really get through it, and you have trauma. People out there, it's affecting your life, and it affects your energy and your mood, and it affects everything, every aspect of your life. It controls it until you start really dealing with it. And that's the first step, is just knowing that you need help. I mean, that's what they say to me. Yeah, that's the first step. I need help.
And the energy of trauma is quite interesting, because it does create a unique trauma within our, within our energy field. Would you say, because you're also one of the runs, we talk about chakra life, and how does chakra work relate to the overall philosophy of sorcery?
Yeah, it's the chakra balancing. There's certain meditations you can do. There's people you can go to that like shamanistic work. I'm not a trained shaman. I like to call myself the shaman, but I'm not a trained shaman. But that is out there and available. Spiritual, guides and things that are familiar with the energy fields. And I'm just getting. I really would like to be trained as a shaman. I'd like to maybe make that the next book, is meeting and getting trained in the shamanistic arts. But I don't have deep knowledge about the chakras. I just there's a chapter in there. One of the rungs is about the importance of them. It gets into like which they are. There's 7 of them on the body, and then there's at least one, maybe even multiple, that are not attached. The soul chakra, which is Egyptians called the Ka, which is above here.
Yeah.
But most trauma is stored in the lower 3. What is it? The root, navel, and solar plexus.
That's it.
And is that that's
I always call it the sacral, the root, the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. I mean, they're all the same thing. The lower 3.
Yeah, and that's where technically there's too much energy. And when you're balancing your chakras, technically there's too much energy, and there needs to be more energy brought up to the higher chakras. It can be, I mean, everyone's different. There could be too much, but usually there's too much energy in the lower ones, and that energy needs to be brought up to the higher ones, because those are the heart. What is the heart, throat, third eye, and then the crown. So these are very important areas to have energy. So when they get stuck in the lower ones, you can tell people that are struggling with their lower chakras. You can see trauma, you can see struggle in people's eyes. I mean, you can see it once you get more in tune with the force and in tune with things. I mean, I just need to look at someone's eyes and just be like, they are deeply struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found in my practice that I do find that an emotional trauma can sit within a chakra. And sometimes by breath work can really help by using the color that's associated to that chakra to go through from the front to the back to breathe through. And then, but when you get to the throat, because it's more about projection, it's from the back to the front. And then you align those with the breath from the crown to the base. So people, you can kind of do a little bit of self-healing that way. And that really helps. And I can only talk from my own personal experience. That helps me to balance. And I got told off the other day because I hadn't been doing it. And a lady said to me, Paul, you're not balanced. You haven't been doing your work. And she was absolutely right. So it's about creating habits with this work as well, isn't it? Getting into good behavior in terms of, I don't want to sound like you've got to be head of the class. That's not what I'm saying. But it's getting good practices set in place, isn't it?
Yeah. And daily routine to come into it. I mean, it doesn't take too long to rewire your brain, but that river change is hard to cross. But it is, it's about setting good thing. And that's what I've found my routines. Like I love my routine. Like meditation is not a chore. It's something I look forward to. I get up, it's like, all right, I get to meditate. I get to bring all that energy up, and like I focus on, those lower ones. And then I kind of picture it as a ball of energy, and I breathe in I take really deep breaths and kind of picture it like kind of coming up the spinal cord and into the brain and kind of flowing down. And like, you just, as you're envisioning this, like it's happening, and it just starts changing. And it's just healthy routines. And, it truly changes things.
Absolutely. And you'll find that something will fit or work for you. It's finding your own kind of what works for you, really. But there's a lot of stuff, and I love that. Also, one thing I really align with you with this is, now, I do not take myself too seriously. I have to have humor in my work, and you really interwoven, is that the right word? Your humor with your spiritual journey. Was that a natural process for you, Justin?
Yeah, so I was a former stand-up comedian. My stand-up comedy was all of probably like 5 open mics in Los Angeles. I had moved there. That was when I was really still struggling with drugs. And like, once I got sober, I realized that I was having such bad panic attacks that I just gave up. And the life of a comedian, if you're trying to be sober in those atmospheres, and it just wasn't working. But that aspect of me is truly important, because I think it's missing a lot in kind of this world, because it's fun. Like, laughter is just, it lightens the mood, it changes everything. So that's what I incorporated in the book is a lot of humor to make people laugh, and there's a lot of jokes in there. There's a lot of references, and to get that levity. And I just think it's so important. And there's just seems to be a lot of separation. I hope to mesh those two pretty well, because you have your comedians and you kind of have your spiritual teachers. And, I haven't seen someone that can step in and kind of, I'm calling myself a mystical comedian. And I'd like to, eventually go on tour and do stand-up philosophy, like kind of, a meshing of the two, make people laugh and think and feel, and like just hit them with those 3 things throughout everything. So I think it's lacking, and I think you can get through to people much easier with humor. And that's, my book starts out with a really funny story, and it kind of disarms people a little bit and lets them know that I'm here. I'm one of you, and I've had my struggles, certainly. So
I love that because you bring so many people in, and it's also a measure of ego, because it helps you to kind of align yourself with people. I wanted to say to you, though, in terms of, oh gosh, I'm just having a brain fart. I'll edit this out. Because I have actually I think I've got COVID, but I'm not 100% sure. And you get into that moment, it's like, ugh. So I might keep this in just for a laugh. But what I wanted to say is humor is really interesting, because you, in terms of who you are, being a comedian and doing stand-up, it's very observational work.
Mm-hmm.
So in itself, you've observed life naturally. I used to observe people all the time growing up. I used to think that was a bit strange, but And when I work, I bring humor as well as connection with people. And you've done that. And I love that because it will bring people along on your journey and connect people. So I want to doff my cap to you. I admire what you're doing and how you're doing it. I think it's really important because I believe, Justin, you will really connect and help a lot of people. So one of the last questions I want to ask you, though, if someone is just starting out on their spiritual journey, gosh, there's so much we talked about. We've had a bit of a scattergun approach, but what would be the first thing you recommend they do? Maybe even before they read the book, is there something that would help them to start that?
Meditation is the number one thing I can recommend to people. There are, there are so many ways to meditate. But there's a lot of apps, Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer. There's great apps that are guided meditations. If you can't just sit there, I mean, I can kind of do it on my own now and just breathing meditations and just concentrate on my breath. But we have two different types of focus, right? There's convergent focus and there's divergent focus. Convergent focus is when you're focused on something. Phones is the biggest thing probably in our world, but you're focused on something in the outer world and that's all you're focused on. Yeah. So source cannot get through to you and speak to you if you're constantly in a convergent focus. So once you take that focus and you make it a divergent focus and focus it on, everything, your surroundings, and just, it's a broad focus of everything. I like to compare it to, convergent focus. Like, let's say you're standing in front of a brick wall, and you've got your nose on it. All you're going to see is just a blurry shade of red. If you take a step back, you'll see that blurry shade of red is a brick. You take another step back, you're going to see it's a wall. You take another step back, you kind of see this wall is surrounding something. And then you take a few more steps back and you realize that wall is connected to a huge castle. And you've created a divergent focus. Yeah. So that is number one, is to start creating that divergent focus, because your brain is just going like this. It's how it works. It needs a break. You never need to take a break from meditation, because meditation is the break. Yeah. So it's just calming the mind, calm it down, and you'll instantly feel better. Like with these, I mean, it can even just be 5 minutes. I mean, I like to meditate probably a couple hours a day when I have time. And yoga is the other big thing. Kind of, if you do a yoga meditation combination, is nothing better. I have apps that I do 30-minute yoga, 30-minute meditation, and I'm ready for anything. Yoga before, meditation after. There seems to be something that happens when you get those juices moving in your body, and like you're able to relax and sit better for the meditation if you've done even just a few minutes of yoga before. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and that's really difficult because our lives are so dependent now on the phone, on the computer, on the television, on the programs, that we're not consciously aware of who we are. And I know there's different states of being. It's trying to be consciously conscious of who we are. That's the difficult thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with these cool gadgets that we have. Yeah. It's just, you need a break.
Balance. Yeah, balance in all things. Absolutely. It's trying to get that balance. Justin, it's been absolutely fantastic. Can we give a plug for the book again?
Yeah, so it's Sourcery 101. It's 13 rungs to higher elevation consciousness. So it is out, and that's all I've got going for me right now. But the book is just out there as kind of the basis for, I'm trying to create more things, maybe get back on social media. If Amazon is I'm just trying to get it out there. I do have 500 promotional codes for free ebooks. So again, I'm just trying to get it out there. Like, if you want the book for free, I'll hook you up. You can email me, or I'm on Telegram. It's both Sorcerer13 with the U. So Sorcerer13 at Gmail, or Sorcerer13 on Telegram. It doesn't have to be that. You can hit me up for anything. I love talking about this stuff. Like, this is the most important stuff humans can talk about. So I love hearing from people. But I can also hook you up with a free ebook code, so you don't even have to pay for it. So I'm just trying to get it out there.
No, we appreciate that, and it's brilliant. And we can't thank you enough for coming on Spiritual Talk and sharing your very personal experiences but also the traumatic journey that you've been through to get to where you are today. Now, I'll retake that. To get you where you are now is fantastic. Justin, thank you for joining us here on Spiritual Talk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.